story of this match, the money involved, and how the outcome hurts both men. It's kind of strange how the paths of these two heavyweights converge because of how each man gathered their accomplishments in two completely different sports. Francis Ngannou made a name for himself as one of the most destructive forces in UFC heavyweight history. He made his UFC debut in 2015 and brutally finished every man in his path until his 2018 title shot, where he was decisively defeated by the champion Stipe Miocic. And a few months later, Francis was seemingly gun-shy as he landed only 11 punches on his way to a decision loss to Derek Lewis, Rosenstruik, and finally Stipe Miocic to capture the UFC heavyweight title in 2021. And in 2022, he out-wrestled and outworked interim champion Ciryl Gane to retain his heavyweight championship. But in 2023, after contract disputes with the UFC regarding his freedom to pursue other endeavors like boxing matchups, Francis vacated his UFC heavyweight title and signed a never-before-seen deal with the PFL, which allowed him the freedom to pursue a boxing career. It seemed like a strange exit at the time, but we have to remember how enticing the prospect of a big boxing match was. You may even recall that Tyson Fury called out Francis Ngannou in 2022 after Tyson knocked out. When you have one of the biggest names in boxing calling your name, it's easy to understand why this played out as it did. For those of you who may not know, the pay ceiling in boxing is significantly higher than that of the UFC. To give you an idea of how different the pay is, according to ESPN, Francis Ngannou made an estimated $600,000 in his last UFC fight, defending his heavyweight world championship against Ciryl Gane. And according to the Sports Daily, Francis made an estimated $580,000 in his knockout victory over Stipe Miocic to capture the UFC heavyweight title, and made an estimated $320,000 the fight before in his knockout victory over Jairzinho Rosenstruik. That means that in his last three, UFC keeps him safe from Francis Ngannou. It's just very disappointing to say the least. And outside of the money, there are almost exclusively negative outcomes for both men. And I know that many of you watching will argue that the money is enough, but you have to consider that when you tarnish your legacy, the financial opportunities you forfeit as a fighter might not have only been larger in amount, but more sustainable.
Ngannou does have the nuclear option. Tyson Fury, Francis Ngannou. Do you want to see that fight? Ngannou does have the nuclear option, though. He really does. One of his knockouts of Alistair Overeem was one of the most terrifying knockouts I've ever seen in my life.
Tyson Fury's the best at what he does, Ngannou's the best at what he does. They're putting him in a ring. I can't see them both being like, hey, let's take it easy.
I think it's confirmed. You don't think it's actually confirmed? If Francis wins that fight, he is solidified as the baddest man on the planet.
Francis Ngannou, I know you're out of contract with the UFC. You want to earn some big boy money? Come see the Gypsy King.
Apparently, Tyson Fury is pretty good in like bouncing